Number one, wishing our officers who were shot over the weekend on early Sunday morning a speedy and full recovery. We want to acknowledge their bravery running toward danger to protect the people of Chicago, and we want to continue to ask for prayers for them and their families. Next, we want to briefly talk about who's on the podium with me. We have with us, along with the First Deputy, Chief of Patrol, Chief of Detectives, and Executive Director of Reform. We also have with us Rebecca Estrada, the Deputy Commissioner, Youth Services, Department of Family and Support Services, and we have Alonzo Williams with Chicago Park Department. And we have them here to just briefly show support for our efforts in building bridges and growing the community's trust, being the core of everything that we do to make Chicago safer. I want to highlight as well the work of our citywide team, the community safety team, who has been tasked with, since their inception, with growing trust in the community, doing community service projects. I want to highlight some of the things they've done besides, obviously, take perpetrators and offenders off the street. They also have worked with our youth, baseball, basketball, tutoring and mentoring sessions, and as well as with students at A. Philip Randolph Elementary School in the 7th District to construct a greenhouse, a project that they're calling Cops and Crops. Also, I want to highlight an additional program as well, is our custom notification program. And it's a program where our officers, along with several social service advocates, go door to door with either violent offenders and their families, or people we think could be involved as victims of violent crime. And we go to their door, we offer them social services. We also outline the consequences of continuing in their behavior, usually the prison and the grave conversation. And we offer them an available list of either job opportunities, educational opportunities, other social services that it might need. It might include addiction services as well. And not just for the offender, the families also offer these same services. So far, we've made over 290 of these door-to-door custom notifications, compared with 38 during the same period in 2020. That's a 663% increase. So along with all the traditional policing things we do, we just wanted to highlight that we also focused on this effort of ensuring that we engage the community, that we have opportunities to build trust and to change behavior. An example would be, we recently made a custom notification of a juvenile in the 14th District who was involved with unlawfully possessing a weapon arrest, an active gang member. This arrest was his 6th arrest. We talked to this young person and their father. A follow-up visit to this young person led to a job opportunity in a local market. In addition, in the 10th District, we went to visit an individual and their mother. This individual had been arrested multiple times for unlawfully possessing a weapon and for battery. This person wasn't home, but their mother was there, and she was excited to see the police offer her son services. He said this, and this is for the room: "You never see the news of the good things police do," is what this mother said, unquote. After a follow-up visit to the home, we did make contact with this offender, and he enrolled in a reading program offered by a local community partner. In addition, I want to highlight some of the work we're doing with the consent decree and reform. We've made significant progress. Obviously, you all know we were behind from RMR 1 and 2. RMR 3 did a lot of catch-up and as well as move forward. But since the consent decree, we've implemented over 111 policies to include use of force, hate crime, and First Amendment. 111 policies since the inception of the consent decree. A lot of hard work by people in our Constitutional Policing Bureau. And as part of the ongoing accountability and reform, under the umbrella of transparency, we began electronically publishing administrative summary reports as mandated by the consent decree. These reports summarize the department's investigations of alleged misconduct and can be reviewed on our accountability dashboard. And finally, before we take questions, I just want to also highlight the homicide clearance rate so far this year. So we have been all year between 57 and over 60% in our clearance rates. Of course, that number moves day to day as we have more and more crimes. But that's a significant improvement. It's the highest it's been since 2015. One recent example of clearing a homicide is one of our Area 1 detectives who brought a murder suspect to justice just last week when they were arrested and charged as an offender in 2 counts of first-degree murder for an incident that took place in July 2020 in the 6th District. You all have the stat sheet for over the weekend crime. I just want to highlight just the year-to-date snapshot of homicides, since we just talked about the clearance rates. As you know, the beginning of the year we ended January of 2021 up 34%. We have been steadily grinding away at reducing homicides in the city all year and reducing the increase. So we began, again, like I mentioned, plus 34% in homicides. To date, we are plus 14%. One homicide is one too many, obviously, but we just wanted to highlight the efforts of our officers, detectives, and other support staff in pushing down the homicides in the city so far this year by ending with re-emphasizing one homicide is one too many. One is one too many. But we started with a plus 34. As you know, we ended last year with plus 50% increase in homicides, and we are plus 14% to date. More work to do, obviously, in all areas of reducing crime, but we are making incremental progress in reducing the most violent crime that occurs, homicides. We're going to now take questions, if you have any. Just want to recount kind of my basic view of violent crime. One is one too many, particularly when it's a young person, a child. Our officers and our detectives, as I mentioned, are making steady progress at reducing the increase from a plus 34% at the beginning of the year, ending last year with plus 50% increase in homicides, to a plus 14% increase in homicides. And it's not lost upon any of us that most of these crimes are done with a firearm. And I just wanted to highlight what's happening with firearm recoveries this year. We've recovered over 4,100 firearms this year. Every gun recovery is a potential deadly force encounter, as we all know. And it takes great courage to take a gun off a person. The 2 officers shot on yesterday morning were responding to a shot spotter where a gun was used to fire, and the shot spotter alerted us, and we approached a person who immediately began shooting at our officers, trying to kill them. That's what it takes to reduce violence in this city. Our officers risking their own lives to protect the people of Chicago is what it has taken and what it will continue to take. Great risk, great courage, great bravery to reduce violence in the city by our officers, but as well as what I mentioned earlier, this whole of government approach as well, to engage offenders with an effort to change behavior, to offer services. We didn't get here overnight, and nor did we get here just because of the criminal justice systems. We got here because of trauma and poverty and disinvestment and other issues that likely don't have a policing solution, and that we have to engage our partners who are standing with me here to offer things in the summer for young people to do, things for people who are in the system, in the criminal justice system, to now be a part of a reading program, to get an education, to lead to a job in a local area where they're productive citizens instead of. So again, we're trying to convey this holistic approach and not just talk about the things that happen where police have to take traditional efforts in making arrests. That's part of the job. We're going to do that, but we also have to be cognizant that we have to do other things as it relates to trauma, you know, impacts of these marginalized communities not having resources to have a chance at people making better decisions. There's two things we have to do as police. And one is, obviously, we have to stop people from hurting others through violence. But the larger issue is how we engage the whole of government and all of the community to stop people from wanting to mete out violence. That's really the larger issue, and don't miss that. That wanting to do something is a hearts and minds issue that we have to have some type of engagement around, rather than just say, you know, arrest will lead to changing of a behavior or heart. We know that that hadn't happened over the many decades of mass incarceration and you know, hoping that the court system alone will change behavior. It really is the whole of government, to include nonprofits and other advocates helping people who obviously live in certain circumstances that likely are very violent from a very young age, and then that trauma oftentimes informs their behavior. And I don't make exceptions to personal responsibility, but there's other things we can do to hopefully change other people's behavior, to change them from wanting to commit violence. Another question? I'm gonna go around and everyone get a chance. Go ahead, you got the mic first.
A couple of questions. One, first of all, there was of the juveniles who were shot over the weekend, there was a 13-year-old who was shot in the head. Do you have an update on that shooting and any arrest in that?
Say that again.
Any arrest?
Update and arrest? Yeah, I'm going to have Chief of Detectives Brendan Deanhan come up with an update on that particular shooting. Brendan.
Good morning. Yeah, nobody in custody at this time. You guys already kind of put out the story. The subject was riding his bike when it looks like a rival gang was following him and targeting him and shot him and fled the area. So detectives have worked overnight on the case, and they're looking for a specific vehicle, and but nobody in custody at this time, and it's just an ongoing open investigation.
Superintendent, can I just follow up, because we're hearing some anecdotal reports that you may be having hundreds of officers that are going to be retiring by the end of June. We know the climate is tough on police. Are you expecting to see a rash of retirements coming up this summer?
So I have been monitoring this issue of attrition in law enforcement across the country, here and everywhere else. And I do realize there is a narrative that's significantly supported by events happening in other departments where spikes have been in retirements. We just have not seen that here. That's not to say that we won't have a spike, but we are tracking normal attrition as of to date. Now, what happens in June, I know kind of the source where this coming from. I've had these conversations with your sources about this. We just haven't seen it. The data doesn't support a spike in attrition at this point. That's not to say that in June or thereafter we won't have a spike, but so far we are tracking normal attrition. Let's pass the mic so everyone can get one question, and then we'll come back for a second round. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any more information on the 11-year-old carjacking suspect arrested over the weekend with, I believe, a 19-year-old?
Yeah, we do. Thank you. Brendan?
Yeah, the 11-year-old and the 19-year-old had committed a carjacking, and then about 2 hours later, officers had spotted the vehicle, and then they eventually apprehended both of them. So the 11-year-old was charged with vehicular hijacking, and then he'll have a court date in juvenile court.
Do we know, is this an example of the recruitment? I know that the superintendent has touched on in the past.
So I don't have any specific information on whether that 11-year-old was recruited. Obviously, he's with a 19-year-old, so I'm not going to talk about his cognitive behavior, but he's with a 19-year-old who was driving when the incident happened. But he was with them when it happened, so the detectives are investigating. He's in custody and he's charged, and we'll figure out in juvenile court. And the superintendent was talking about making sure that people like the 11-year-old have services rendered to them in order to change their behavior.
Go ahead.
Do we have a sense of, can you give us a little bit better sense of the build-up when the two officers were shot, what happened immediately preceding that?
Sure. So it's really a straightforward incident where shot spot alert goes off. Our officers often respond, and just to kind of broadly talk about a response to a shot spotter, one of the most dangerous responses that we would make. Oftentimes we do accost people armed with weapons who don't follow our instructions and likely make furtive gestures or movements that are quite threatening when you keep the firearm in your hand. A turn or a twist or a jerk can mean you're shot and you're killed. So our officers are obviously on the highest alert when they're responding, but they had no time when they arrived before this offender began shooting at them, trying to kill them. But for the grace of the good Lord that we are not planning funerals for these two officers, and we're so grateful to all the support we've heard from the people of Chicago. But it's as simple as responding to a shot spotter and being fired upon once they arrive with no time to react in any way or another. The questions? Yes.
Well, given the number of police who become targets in these situations, do you have a reason why so many police have been shot at and shot this summer so far? And are you expecting this to be a dangerous summer on the streets of Chicago?
Well, to make sure I highlight what's happened in relation to your question. So since 2020, which is in the last 15 months, 108 officers have been shot at or shot at the Chicago Police Department. 108. Extraordinary number. Unprecedented. The most on record. We can't find a higher time period. 29 of those so far this year shot at or shot, with 6 being shot. It's just an extraordinary 500% increase from 2020, and we're tracking at a higher pace than 2020. And this has happened not just here, all over the country. This open disregard for law enforcement and our safety. What's more remarkable, though, than this attack is the extraordinary bravery and courage to come to work every day and run toward danger. And just the support, obviously, that they get internally, but the hypercriticism that they get externally hadn't affected their ability to do their job. We haven't seen spikes in attrition. We haven't seen officers riding slower to a shot spotter call, knowing they're going to face somebody likely with a gun that's willing to take their life, and yet they run toward danger. And they could wait till things clear. They don't. They run toward danger and continue to risk their lives. And I mentioned this on yesterday's presser. We know that the silent majority of people in this community and across the country recognize this. But the silent majority, we're asking for you to be more vocal in supporting our officers. They need to be encouraged. It's the most difficult time to be a police officer that I've seen in my 30-plus years as a police professional. And the challenges are monumental from not only we have to embrace change, we have to embrace new policies, we have to embrace more training, we have to embrace all of this criticism and change our culture. We do, while at the same time risk your lives in the face of all of these other challenges. Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown, is there an update to the case of the 2-year-old shot in Little Village? And is there a plan for Little Village? Because apparently they've been seeing an increase in robberies and shootings. Do you guys have something in plan for them?
We do, but let me give you the update on the investigation first, and then we'll come back, and I'm going to have Chief of Detectives answer the investigative question first, and then I have the Chief of Patrol, Chief McDermott, talk a little bit about our summer plan to include Little Village. All right, thanks. Brandon?
So for the 2-year-old, we don't have a further update on that case. The detectives are still working it. There's nobody in custody. I'm not going to go into great details on what they're doing. We're obviously looking at video, as we always do, to try to figure out who actually was discharging the firearm that caused that. But nobody's in custody, and it's an open, ongoing investigation. Detectives are obviously doing interviews and trying to figure out why this specific car was targeted. But that's an open and ongoing investigation.
So as far as our plan for Little Village, part of our summer plan is what we've been working on the last couple of weeks is a community safety protection plan. It's a plan where it takes the whole of government approach. It's a framework for interagency collaboration where we bring in services from all across the city and we drop them in a neighborhood that is experiencing violence. So in addition to coordination and collaboration with all the police department's resources, we're coordinating and collaborating with all the different city agencies and trying to get as many services as we can into Little Village.
And before we continue on with questions, I didn't give a chance for our two guests that's here to really be helpful with the whole of government approach. Let's have Rebecca Estrada come up and just have a few words. She's a Deputy Commissioner of Youth Services, Department of Family and Support Services. Rebecca.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Rebecca Estrada, and I serve as the Deputy Commissioner of Youth Services at the Chicago Department of Family and Support Services. The One Summer Chicago Youth Summer Employment Program is one of the largest youth initiatives we provide in the city. Corporations, local businesses and organizations, city departments, and sister agencies come together to create an opportunity ecosystem for young people every summer. It is one of the many ways we remain dedicated and committed to young people in Chicago to help ensure they have opportunities to develop skills, learn with and from others, and build ideas about their futures that we want them to look forward to with confidence and hope. One Summer Chicago provides more than a summer job. It provides hands-on experience, mentoring from industry professionals, and networking and team-building skills trainings that can benefit them long after the summer ends. This summer, over 21,000 paid opportunities are available in fields such as coding and tech, healthcare, photography, video production and media, and pandemic response initiatives available through the Chicago Youth Service Corps. These paid experiences will be available both in person and through remote participation. In-person jobs will follow all public health guidelines to ensure that all sites are safe for everyone. Applications are now being accepted online at onesummerchicago.org through Friday, June 11th, and eligible for residents 14 to 24 years old. One Summer Chicago work opportunities begin July 5th and will conclude Friday, August 13th. We thank Mayor Lightfoot and all of our partners for their steadfast resolve to make summer jobs for youth a top priority, even during COVID-19. We are excited to kick off summer programming on July 5th. Thank you.
Alonzo, I'm sorry.
All right, I might look like Anthony. Good morning. I'm Alonzo Williams. I serve as the Chief Program Officer with the Chicago Park District. And as my good friends over here at the Chicago Police Department, we have our poster up. So what do we have to offer young people this summer? Primarily, we drop it into 3 buckets: programs, jobs, and special events. So if you talk about the first one, programs, no, I cannot support anybody with getting your kids into summer camp. My kids aren't in summer camp yet, but we have a huge opportunity there. We have doubled our numbers from 2020. So we have a lot of opportunity for young people to get in programs, as well as the teen population age group as well. For jobs, as you can look on the poster, we still have jobs open. We have hundreds of jobs open. We do fall under the umbrella of One Summer Chicago, but we are hiring our rec leaders, our lifeguards, and our junior laborers. So you get in where you fit in. If you don't want to deal with the kids directly, you want to pick up paper, we got a job for you. If you like to deal with the kids, we got a job for you. If you want to look cool in your swimsuit all summer, we got a job for you. Third but not least is programs. So the special events. The Chicago Park District has multiple special events, particularly for a teen age group. We have our Tip Fest, which is Teen in the Parks, and you'll see a lot of that. The young people do what they call ciphers when they get together and they rap and they do spoken word and poetry. So we have a lot of those slams coming to you, as well as we have a brand new event that we're partnering with the city called Summer Kickback Series. And the Summer Kickback Series is getting kids together to kind of just do what kids want to do. We've created that program, and we're working with community-based organizations in roughly 15 communities to make sure we push it out this summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Alonzo. Just want to take any last questions. I think everyone went around at least once. We got one more that didn't ask a question, then we'll come back to a second round.
Thanks, Sue.
Yeah.
In the last couple of days, a few sources have told me that you've ordered a change in the schedules of 9 district commanders in 9 of the most violent districts across the city, where instead of a 9 to 5, they'll work a 3 to 11. What are you hoping to see with that change in schedule, and why now?
So one of the things that's really important as the weather warms, we likely will open up more as far as being able to gather, have concerts, have special events, have large parties, pop-up parties. We oftentimes have violence associated with that. And so what we want to do is proceed with an all-hands-on-deck during the peak hours of when all of what we think will happen. You know, think about the last global pandemic we had in this country. And what followed was the Roaring '20s. And I don't know if you've read F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. So if all that pent-up energy, because we've been quarantined, explodes with all of this, people being out, more people being active in the outdoors, we want to make sure it's safe. And what that means is during the peak hours, we need to be on point with our leadership. We need to lead from the front so that the rank and file can model our behavior and as well be on point as well. So with that being said, your new name is TMZ, Sam. I know you own it with word on the street. So, any other questions?
Sup, I want to get your response to this fatal car crash that happened in the suburbs in Arlington Heights, 29-year-old driver, off-duty Chicago police officer. What can you tell us about the circumstances surrounding that? Because it looks like it was a high rate of speed crash.
That investigation is ongoing from a different police department. As soon as they conclude and forward whatever details they want to share with us, we'll certainly make that public. But likely, I believe it's Arlington Heights is the lead on that investigation. We don't want to speculate on what's happening with that ongoing investigation. But as soon as we know more, we'll certainly release more.
Your reaction to losing one of your officers overnight, though?
As we all know, this happened in an off-duty capacity, and we don't fully know the circumstances. Our condolences go out to the family of this officer, obviously. Questions? I think we're going to second round. Yeah.
You hinted at some of the changes that you're making as we're heading into summer. Can you perhaps address a little more of what the summer plan is going to look like? And again, going back to the point you were making, if people are now coming out of COVID, as we're opening up, are you expecting this is going to be a busier, a more violent summer? And what is your plans to address that?
So one of the things that we've been doing for the last several months is planning around violence, changing, restructuring. We've done that for several months now since the height of violence last summer. We obviously using data, to push all of our deployments as well as this whole of government approach. With our utilization of data, we've identified certain neighborhoods over kind of a statistical 3-year period that drives violence in the city year over year. We have special plans for those 15 areas within the city, as well as plans for all 22 districts to identify through data our deployment strategy to include community engagements in those same areas. So not just an enforcement first, but we want to balance our enforcement with engaging the community as well, highlighting all the things I talked about earlier in our press conference.
What are you telling your officers to expect this summer?
Number one, we try to give as much notice as possible that we might change hours, we might extend shifts, and we might, as a last resort, cancel days off, particularly around our holidays, and we've tried to communicate that repeatedly. Can't communicate that enough because all these officers have to change some of their personal lives to be able to meet these demands. But we again, talked about all of this with them, and we continue to do that. Any other questions from anyone else? Second round.
I did want to ask you just one more question about the Smart 911 system, where you're asking people to sign up to share their video. Is this something that you're going to be asking officers when they're doing community engagement to try to sign people up? And can you talk just a little bit more about that?
I think there's more of another opportunity to talk more in detail about this. It involves other departments. OMC obviously houses our 911 systems, and obviously what we do to engage the public with 911 system. There is a privacy component. There's likely apprehension around giving my information. And so I think there's a larger conversation to have, probably not for this press conference. If we don't have anything else over the last week or what we talked about earlier, we're going to thank you all and see you next time. Appreciate it. Thank you.